Hey, Truth Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. Yesterday, September 8th, 2015, the mainstream media put out another police story that builds the false narrative that police officers are honest people who hold bad police officers accountable. Yesterday's story is that a racist police chief in Clatskanie, Oregon, a small town, was held accountable by the officers under him. Last week, it was a story out of Millis, Massachusetts, where a police officer shot his own car, set it on fire, but blamed it on a false suspect, causing a needless manhunt. That police officer was later held accountable and fired. Again, both of these stories paint the picture that the police weeds out bad apples and maintains an air of honesty and integrity, which couldn't be further from the truth. In this nation, there probably isn't a single honest, reputable police department. I live in a small town. I was recently robbed by the police department in my town, and since then have been jailed by that same police department while standing in my own front yard trying to get justice and protection from my neighbor who also participated in the robbery of my home and was also the first person to tip me off that the police were involved, because when I confronted him, he grinned at me and said, "Remember, I'm friends with the police." This man is 30 years older than me, grew up in the town I live in. I've only been in this town since 2012, in the time I've been doing a lot of this research and putting it out. That point aside, let's look at the coding of this hoax and how it's easy to see through. The first person to break this story, it's now covered by all the mainstream outlets, but the first person to write about it was Shaun King of Black Lives Matter. And I already did a video on Shaun King showing he's a coded agent participating in this race war. Black Lives Matter is not a movement for black people. It is a Zionist movement. It is a divide and conquer movement. It works against black people as well as all other people living on this planet. Black Lives has the gematria of the Masonic numbers, the numbers of division. Black Lives equals 33 and 42 with the S exception. Just like Daily Kos, who Shaun King writes for, a Masonic left publication. The Masons have publications on the left and right. Remember, they're invested in divide and conquer. And it's gematria that's fitting because it matches police. The police are the modern day KKK when it comes to the race war. K is the 11th letter. KKK is 33 in simple English gematria. This story comes out of Clatskanie, Oregon. Oregon is the 33rd state, the only state with gematria of 74. And 33 and 74 are two of the most important numbers to the Masons. The word Masonic is 74. Again, police has gematria of 33, just like race war. In this story, the racist is said to be Chief Marvin Hoover. And that name Hoover reminds of J. Edgar Hoover, who led the federal police, the FBI, until his death, and was said to be a major racist and especially hateful of people such as Martin Luther King Jr. We'll look more at this name, Chief Marvin Hoover, in just a moment. The date of the story from the reporting, the police officers outing their racist chief, goes back to June 25th, 2015. This is a date with 46 numerology, one of the numbers so heavily coded into police officer hoaxes. The town Clatskanie, Oregon also sits on the 46th parallel, and it's on the 123rd meridian. Remember, the word conspiracy has gematria of 123. Conspiracy, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Clatskanie, Oregon, the location has some interesting gematria, especially 88, the number of poison in program. This is a story about promoting racist rhetoric. And I'll tell you what, Truth Seeker, the details we're about to read in this story, they are very real. White people do these types of things all the time. It's part of the reason it is this story, because it's going to reinforce the behavior of many white people all throughout this nation. Let's read the story. On June 25th, two Clatskanie, Oregon police officers witnessed something horrific. The fallout from what they witnessed has been just as bad, and the implications reveal that racism runs throughout the city. They say it as if racism doesn't run throughout this nation, and as if this media doesn't constantly program it. According to the city website, Clatskanie has been described as a Norman Rockwell picturesque small city nestled in green hills and valleys on the coastal range in northwest Oregon. This comparison, it turns out, is actually highly appropriate because many observers believe that the bulk of Rockwell's paintings were racist and displayed a white supremacist vision of America, and white black folk were perpetually subservient. The phrase white supremacy in Pythagorean gematria sums to 74, also matching Oregon, part of the coding of the story. Officer Alex Stone, who was white, arrested an African American woman, one of less than 10 black residents in the town, on June 25th. During the arrest, she told Officer Stone that she was going to sue the department for racism. When the officer arrived back at the station, he decided, as he was standard, to debrief Police Chief Marvin Hoover, also a white man, on the incident. Chief Hoover, mind you, is an award-winning veteran leader of this police department. What followed and was witnessed by multiple officers is deeply disturbing. As Officer Stone was describing his earlier arrest to Chief Hoover, he said to the chief that the woman he arrested said that local police think black people are animals. At that point, according to multiple eyewitness accounts, the chief interrupted Officer Stone and said, "That's what they are. They're animals." The name Officer Alex Stone, the officer who's outing the racist police chief, has gematria of 78 and 87. Notice that the word truth has gematria of 87. He's made to be a truth teller, someone working for truth and justice, and ratting out his superior officer, the racist. The name of his officer, Chief Marvin Hoover, has gematria of 101, and the reason that stands out to me is because Hoover Dam also has gematria of 101, and as we were saying before, J. Edgar Hoover, the leader of the federal police, the FBI until his death, was very racist, well known. Moving on with this story, Chief Hoover placed his hands in his armpits and began scratching them. Chief Hoover also started making loud monkey sounds. Hoo, 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 ha, 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 hoo, ha, ha. White Chief Hoover was scratching and chanting. He started to move around the room in a dance of jumping fashion. While jumping and moving about the room, Chief Hoover momentarily beat his chest like Tarzan. True Seeker, what I want to point out is that my dad and I, we both grew up in Oregon. We're both Oregon natives. My dad, after he became divorced from my mother, he remarried a black woman, and he was married to her for several years. She ended up divorcing him to go back to her previous husband, who was also a black man. That really broke my dad's heart at the time. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing up this story is because my dad, he likes to walk a lot. It's one of his favorite things. He likes to walk and watch baseball games. But anyway, there was a day where he was walking in his own town with his wife, and a car slammed on the brakes next to them, and out of the window, the people in it, it was a car full of teenagers, younger white teenagers, maybe early 20s, and they all started making monkey sounds and hoo-hooing at him. It really pissed off my dad. He told that story so many times, how much it angered him. You know, the reason I'm bringing this up is because this behavior is commonplace in this nation, and the reason it's commonplace is because the media is constantly reinforcing it. And even by putting out stories like this, it's going to reinforce that behavior. It's going to make more white people want to do this. And notice the author of this, Sean King, this guy who's supposedly out for Black Lives Matter, keeps emphasizing white, 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 calling attention to race. And if you don't understand the way how this works, the more focus you put on race, the more division you will have, no matter how you're trying to present it. Moving on with the story, Officer Zach Gibson, who was also there, witnessed the incident and stated, "Officer Stone brushed aside the antic, but I could observe that it bothered him. At the same time, I was in disbelief that the chief of police was acting in such a manner while an officer is concerned he may be accused of racism." At this point, Chief Hoover doubled down on his racism. Notice that the name Officer Zach Gibson has gematria of 88, like Clatskanie, Oregon, where we began, and those initials ZG break down to 87, like the officer above, the number connected to truth. Moving on, Chief Hoover then stated to sing the words to Dixieland, going back to the Confederacy, the states of Dixie. In a land of cotton, old times they're not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away. As the chief sang the song, he kneeled down and began to make a punching motion with his right fist. While making a punching motion, Chief Hoover held his hand in front of him in a gripping motion, as if he was holding a person by the shirt collar. In addition, while singing the words, "Look away," Chief Hoover moved his head back and forth to his left and right as if he was looking over his shoulder. The chief then laughed and left the room, but the story gets worse. With regards to Dixieland, Truth Seeker, I just want to point out that Dixieland has gematria of 46, like the date of the incident, like the coordinates of the town, like the number coded into police hoaxes over and over. Dixie itself has gematria of 33, the number of the race war, the number of the Masons, who divide and conquer. When Officer Stone communicated how disturbed he was to his superior, Sergeant McQuitty, Stone states in his report that McQuitty got extremely quiet and unresponsive and offered no guidance on filling a complaint. Without the support of his superior, Officers Stone and Gibson contacted their union and local attorneys, who asked them to ask Sergeant McQuitty to join their complaint one last time. This time the response was even worse, Officer Stone stated. Sergeant McQuitty told me didn't believe anything would happen to Chief Hoover and that the city would make life hell for us doing this. Sergeant McQuitty said it would be hell at least 3 times during our last conversation. I almost felt as if I was being dissuaded from pursuing a complaint. When Officer Gibson spoke to Sergeant McQuitty on his own about the complaint, the sergeant stated that he was concerned some type of retaliation may come, particularly if they told City Manager Greg Hinkleman. Of course, we live in a nation where if any time you out your superiors, no matter if you're police or you work at a fast food restaurant, there's going to be retaliation. That's American culture. That's the way the workplace is. No first name for McQuitty in the reporting, but notice that the name Sergeant McQuitty has gematria of 77, like the word police officer, and 86, like the word symbol, triangle, pyramid. This is a symbolic story. The story went to City Manager Greg Hinkleman, gematria of 123, like conspiracy. Let us close with this mainstream coverage.
It feels disgusting, to be honest with you.
For Amy Driscoll, this is personal.
The reason why I'm really affected by this is I have seen my father mistreated by police officers.
She said she talked to members of the Clatskanie City Council to hear why they voted to allow Marvin Hoover to step down from the position after she says he was put on paid leave recently, being investigated for allegedly making racist remarks.
So that left a lot of us going...
Notice that she's wearing purple. Purple, Poison, and Program all have gematria of 88, just like Clatskanie, Oregon. Also, her name, Amy Driscoll, has gematria of 64, the reflection of 46, numbers heavily coded in police hoaxes.
Okay, like, what's the context of these comments? What happened? How did they get this information?
Today, Coin6 obtained this official report filed with the department.
Notice the officer's name, Dustin. Dustin is a 33 name like police.
Of Public Safety by 2 police officers. It says that Hoover began moving around a room, making monkey noises, referring to an African-American woman as an animal.
We had just a car come by 5 times yesterday and scare our children while they're playing outside.
Officer Alex Stone says some members of the community started harassing him and his family after he, along with Officer Gibson, filed that report against the chief late July, saying they were both witnesses to the act. Do you believe that the chief is racist?
I'm not going to comment about that.
Officer Stone says he can't comment because he still does not know what he is or is not allowed to say. But he did say this.
Any racism in any form is inappropriate in any public service or public office.
Now, we called and left a message for Mayor Diane Pohl for comment after reading her letter to the editor.
Let's just close here. Notice the 88 on the screen. Poison, Program, Clatskanie, Oregon, and her name's Diane, a 33 name. What else? All right, Truth Seeker, until next time.